Today, things are improving regarding the pandemic, but do not let your guard down just yet. That's the message today from the nation's top health officials. The number of new infections has dropped almost 20%, along with the rate of a number of nationwide hospitalizations. That's good news, but those numbers are still much higher than they were last summer and fall. The death toll in the U.S. is currently more than 463,000 and is averaging more than 3,000 deaths a day, including, sadly, Republican Congressman Ron Wright, the first sitting member of Congress to die from the virus. Wright was 67 years old and represented parts of the Dallas, Texas area. He was also battling cancer. As CNN's Erica Hill reports, health officials are also anxious about a mutant variant of the virus spreading rapidly across the United States.
We have to assume that what happened in the United Kingdom is going to happen here with this variant.
Swift-moving variants now identified in more than 30 states.
The continued proliferation of variants remains of great concern and is a threat that could reverse the recent positive trends we are seeing.
The CDC says it's stepping up sequencing efforts.
What we need to do as quickly as possible is obviously vaccinate the American people.
The pace is improving.
Saturday was a remarkable day. We had 1.8 million vaccines administered in the United States. If we can do that every single day, then we'll stay ahead of this.
72% of distributed doses in arms as of Monday morning. More than 9.5 million people now fully vaccinated. New York City Field set to open Wednesday as another mass vaccination site with a focus on taxi drivers and food service and delivery workers.
These are folks who we all depend on.
New cases and hospitalizations dropping.
This is promising, but hospitalizations also remain incredibly high, much higher than the summer and fall.
Average daily reported deaths stuck above 3,000 and rising in 9 states.
What we're really seeing is still the aftermath of the winter holidays, of Christmas and New Year's. So it's, 6 to 8 weeks later, people are dying from the disease.
In Tampa, Super Bowl fans partying like it's 2019, prompting concern about what's to come. More states easing restrictions, no more mask mandate in Iowa, despite top experts urging otherwise.
We really need to keep all of the mitigation measures at play here if we're really going to get control of this pandemic.
The CDC promising new school guidelines this week. Columbus, Ohio, welcoming 4th and 5th graders back today.
They felt safe being in our buildings. Nat felt good as a leader.
And after a weeks-long standoff, a tentative agreement to get teachers and kids back to school in Chicago.
I am confident that the measures that we have and will put in place will make our schools even safer than they already are and will be a model for other systems in Illinois and throughout the country.
Jake, we also learned today that here in New York City, middle school students in the city's public schools are set to return now for in-person learning on February 25th. About half of the city's 471 middle schools are ready to bring them back for 5 days a week. The others are going to be working toward that. The chancellor actually noting, Jake, the isolation is having a real impact and said both families and educators have spoken up about it, saying that the students are suffering.
All right. Good news that those kids will get to go back to school. Thanks so much, Erica. The Dean of Brown University School of Public Health, Dr. Ashish Jha, joins me now to discuss this and much more. Dr. Jha, a new study finds the UK variant is 35 to 45% more transmissible than earlier strains that appeared in the U.S. What's the worst-case scenario with these variants, whether the UK or South African or any others?
Yeah, Jake, first, thanks for having me on. With the UK variant, the worst-case scenario is a huge spike in cases. And what we saw in the UK, in Ireland, Denmark, Portugal, other places that have seen this variant take off, is just this sort of unrelenting spread that can happen very quickly and within weeks overwhelm the system, the health system. Obviously, we're starting off at a high level. We've got to do really careful genomic surveillance to identify how much this is spreading. And we've got to try to, prevent that kind of a spike.
Dr. Fauci says that the UK strain could be the most dominant strain in the U.S. by the end of March. What should the Biden administration be doing about all these variants right now?
Yeah, there are a couple of things that are really critical. I mean, first of all, we got to do much more genomic surveillance. We got to know where this stuff is spreading. Right now, we just don't have our eyes on the on the game, as it were. So we don't know where exactly it's spreading and how much. We need to do much more of that. Second, they've got to continue with their message of making sure people are wearing masks and social distancing. What the governor of Iowa just announced, not helpful at this moment. This is not the time to let up. And then third, obviously keep going on vaccines. What I would love to see is all high-risk elderly people vaccinated before the strain becomes completely widespread. So these are the things to focus on at this moment to protect the American people.
South Africa is pausing the rollout of the AstraZeneca vaccine because it offers less protection against specifically the South African variant. Could you see the U.S. potentially doing something similar if an approved vaccine does not have as strong efficacy against variants?
Yeah, I think that's theoretically possible. I think right now I'm pretty confident both the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines will be effective at preventing especially severe disease for the South Africa variant. J&J, which is being evaluated by the FDA right now, seems to have pretty good efficacy against the South Africa variant. So that kind of stuff is, again, it needs ongoing monitoring, but I remain pretty, let's say, cautiously optimistic that our vaccines are going to hold up against the South Africa variant.
Should people who have not yet gotten a vaccine wait for one that's proven to protect against these variants, or should they just get a shot in the arm as soon as possible regardless?
Yeah, absolutely get a shot in the arm if it's your turn. I mean, remember, 98% of the strains that are out there are the kind of normal strains that we've been dealing with. And that's still what's hurting and killing all those Americans who are dying of this disease. So it's a no-brainer. If it's your turn to get vaccinated, you should get vaccinated. If there's an update at some point down the road, and I'm not saying there will be, then we can maybe all deal with that at that point, but no reason to wait.
So we're keeping an eye on these variants, even though they're a minority of the infections in the United States. Relatedly, the CDC is reporting that there are more than 2,000 children who have gotten a rare condition that inflames organs after these kids are exposed to COVID. 30 of these kids have died. Some parents and kids have been lax about COVID precautions because children are generally speaking much lower risk. But obviously, and I don't want to overstate this, this is a minority of the minority in terms of the cases among kids, but this still can be very deadly.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, no doubt about it. Kids get much milder disease on average. But the bottom line is, from the beginning of this pandemic, all of us in the public health sphere have been saying, let's not be cavalier. Let's not take the sort of herd immunity people's approach of let the infection run wild in young people. Because even though young people do better, there are plenty of them who still end up having complications. And there's no reason for it. And what we should do is protect people until we have vaccines that are safe and effective that we can use.
But that doesn't mean as long as the schools are safe that schools should not be reopened, though, right? I mean, if the kids are wearing masks and that schools have proper ventilation and small enough class sizes and all the other steps, health officials say it's safe to open up the school, you still think that as well?
Absolutely. Look, the reason to open schools is not because kids don't get sick from the virus, because there are adults in school, right? Teachers and staff. I think there's now very good evidence that if we put in the mitigation measures you laid out, Jake, that in fact schools can be very safe for adults and kids, and that's why we should open them up. Of course, there's incredible social value in having kids back in school, but I think they can be made safe, and that's the real principle that we should be focused on.
All right, Dr. Ashish Jha, thank you so much for your expertise. As always, we always appreciate it.